For more on this, I'm joined by Thom Hartmann, host of the syndicated radio talk show, The Thom Hartmann Program. He's the author of multiple important books, including The Hidden History of the American Dream and the aforementioned Gloria J. Brown Marshall, civil rights attorney, professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York, and author of multiple books as well, including A Protest History of the United States. Welcome to both of you. Thom, nice to have you. You're on the show a lot, but nice to actually have you with me in studio. It's great to see you.
It's a pleasure and an honor.
Gloria, thank you, first of all, for your remarkably, not just powerful words, but positive words, because that's what we need. We need somebody who thinks, you know, the way many of us think, but can sort of frame this in positivity. This whole notion of framing the 8-hour work week, which we take for granted now, as something that took decades to actually win slowly and with great difficulty, really resonated with me.
Thank you.
Talk to me about that in this context of 21st century activism.
I think you've summed it up very well when you think about what people want and what they're willing to fight for. And we have to be willing to fight for what we need today, but also for future generations. And I think something that got lost along the line is that we're not just fighting for our comfort this moment, but we have to make protest and investment into generations and people we don't know. Sometimes we want to just fight for what we know today and whom we know. And we have to realize that the rights we're enjoying today were fought by people who never knew our names. And they did not, many of them, enjoy those same things we have taken for granted today. They never got to have in their lifetime. They invested in a future freedom. And that future freedom is something that sometimes selfishly in the 21st century, we can't imagine ourselves doing for people we won't see and for a freedom we won't possess.
They invested in a future freedom. Thom, you and I have had this discussion. In fact, we had it. I told you about my grandfather who, you know, fought apartheid all his life. He died at the age of 58, fully thinking he had failed. And yet I'm here having this conversation with you and Gloria. Right?
You just never know.
You never know. So this concept of fighting for a future freedom is amazing. That this may not happen this year, may not even happen in the midterms next year, may not happen in the presidential election of 28, but you must fight because somewhere in the future there is hope that something will be better.
Well, and this ideal that the founders fought for is still here. I mean, you know, this country has never realized its full potential. We have a long way to go. And, you know, all those wonderful words from back then, but you look at like the 56 guys who signed the Declaration of Independence, you know, many of them lost everything. I mean, they just got wiped out. Some of them lost their families. You know, multiple, I forget the number, lost their homes. There were times when they thought, that's it, you know, we've lost. But, you know, they persisted. Yeah. And throughout American history, people have persisted. When the South lost its freedom in the 1840s and 50s, when the South ceased to be a functioning democracy, it became a full-blown neo-fascist oligarchy, yeah, where even white people who protested slavery in the South or published magazines or newspapers, you know, abolitionist public, were lynched, you know, were driven out of the South. Democracy had completely ended. We fought a bloody war. I mean, God forbid it ever comes to that again, but we persisted. We continued to hold to these values, and we continue to speak out about these values, and we continue to fight for these values, and it's so critical.
If you're not that person who wants to protest in the street, which we now think as traditional protests, we need to understand that people can write that op-ed piece for their local newspaper or whatever, their local social media. They could join an organization. And if you join an organization, you don't have to lead it. People think, I don't want to be president of the organization. You don't have to be. You can be a foot soldier. It took tens of thousands of foot soldiers in the labor movement, in the anti-war movement, in the civil rights movement, the women's rights movement. All of these people had to give something that they had that they could contribute in a way. They make the sandwiches, make the signs, write a check, send some money and support in a certain way. Don't buy at a particular store that's supporting this regime. And I call it a regime because he said he's going to come in as a dictator. He's acting like a dictator dictator. Dictators have regimes. And so that's why I refer to it as such. But there are ways in which we can voice our opinions. Stop watching shows or networks that aren't following a certain value system. There are ways in which we vote locally or support candidates who are trying to oppose this regime. There are so many ways that we can do this. And as was pointed out, Rosa Parks' protest of one individual not giving up her seat was internationally known just as those protesters of young people, high school students, college students. The reason why we know of John Lewis for so long is he started protesting when he was 14. Some of the anti-war protesters, the Tinkers, who, that case went to the U.S. Supreme Court, they wore an armband as a protest in their school. So there are so many ways we can show our displeasure with this regime, and there are ways in which we can invest in the next generation. Have a teach-in. Actually teach people about some of the issues that are so important. And we feel like we're being bombarded by all these different issues. Take one particular issue and focus on that if it feels like there are so many issues that are, assaulting us all at once, which is intentional.
Professor Brown Marshall says something very interesting. In all of the things she listed, she emphasizes giving or contributing. In other words, there's some level of discomfort that you have to engage in. You do not have to get arrested at a protest, but you are going to have to do something other than complain, Tom.
Yeah, well, back in the 60s, I was both tear gassed and arrested.
Yes, yes.
Been there, done that. And I'm trying to think of any major social, going forward, social change that has come about in the United States, in the history of the United States, that wasn't preceded by protest, that wasn't brought about by protest, that wasn't caused by protest. And, whether it's, just like boycotts, whether it's, being in the streets, the classic stuff. I was in SDS back in the 60s, in the midst of all that in 68, 69. The civil rights movement, every single, the labor movement, obviously, every single one of these steps. And in every case, it wasn't just, hey, let's just get everybody out here. I mean, I think it was Erica Chenoweth who did the research that found that 3.5% is the tipping point.
Right.
Yeah, and if you can get 3.5% of the populace engaged, not necessarily even in the streets, but fully engaged, and I think we're moving in that direction really rapidly.
Gloria, one of the things you talked about all the things that we can do in this moment to help plant, the seed for future generations of freedom, not just the thing that we're fighting for right now. You're the child of protesters. And it's important that sometimes the thing you do may simply be motivation for someone else.
It may be. I remember my mother getting up early in the morning. She always wanted to be the first person to the polls to vote.
Wow.
And these things that our parents did, yes. And I when you talk about, your forebears in our history, our families just need to think about someone in the line, an aunt, an uncle, grandparents, whomever. I have intertwined in my book the story of my great-great-grandmother, Eliza, who was enslaved in Kentucky, who decided to rise up against her enslavers. And she's an exoduster, those people who came up from the South to the Midwest, leaving terrorism from the Ku Klux Klan and actually leaving to come to another place. That's a form of protest. Why expand this idea of protest beyond what happens in the street to include so many things we can do. If you don't mind if I add, the sit-in is something that is not being used, I think, effectively during this time period. When Tom talks about SDS and what the students at University of Michigan and other places did, they used all forms of strategies connected to the protests. And I think that's what's disconnected right now. We have people going out and they have a message of what they oppose, but they don't have a strategy for the protests. They're not looking at what they want to accomplish or a vision, not just opposing someone else's vision of the world, but what is our vision of the world? The anti-war protesters wanted peace. What do we want for the future? And that's something else that we have to take into account to make our protests more effective.
Gloria, do you share that view that the Democratic Party can play a major role in this? Because there are certainly many people and certainly many progressives in this country who are quite disillusioned by the role that the Democratic Party is actually playing. Is that central to the success of this protest movement?
I don't think it's central. And I think it's going to play a role. But I think a lot of our legacy institutions, like our Democratic Party, like the churches, and so many others, I'm wondering, where's the labor union? They have such a deep root in structure and how to protest. Their protests will go back to the 1800s, as you know, in my book, A Protest History of the United States. Where are they in instructing people how to best strategize within a protest? People are laying low in their silos. And as long as the Democratic Party and the churches, the institutions, the labor, as long as people stay in their silos, the higher institutions of Harvard and such, they're going to get picked off. We're going to have to come together. There is power in protest. The people have that power, but we also need to know there are no leaders here at this point. And before you had leaders in SDS, you had leaders of the Civil Rights Movement, the Farm Workers Union movement. So where are these different leaders? Where are the different women's organizations coming together to lead? It seems like women, especially white women, are sitting back, watching things happen. And this idea of waiting for somebody else. And I don't negate the fact that this institution, this regime, has studied us, Tom. Think about this. They have studied us. They've studied the ways in which we would attack back. They've studied these institutions, and they've figured out ways to isolate us, and in isolating us, try to attack one after the other and bring us each individually down. Unity is what we need to defeat, divide, and conquer. The power of unity is what we need to see right now, and that means people are going to have to start trusting each other and not believe that the Democratic Party, the church, or any one institution can combat what we're dealing with right now.
It's a remarkable conversation. I've been taking notes throughout, and it's going to inform many more segments that we do on this show. So I'm grateful to both of you for your, not just your contribution today, but the books you've written and the studying you've done and the actual work you've done that can be an example to all of us.